He sent that text on December 23rd. I was in my apartment in Columbus, Ohio, sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes. My phone lit up with my father's name. I opened it. 7 words, "Nobody wants you here right now. Don't come." I sat with that text for a long time. I did not call him back. I did not drive to Indiana. I did not go to Christmas that year or the year after or the year after that. 3 years later, I am the founder and chief executive officer of Vanguard Health Solutions, a healthcare compliance technology company that was valued at $670 million ahead of our Series B funding round. And my sister Lauren and her husband Bradley are about to walk into a ballroom that I own for the evening, at an event that bears my name, without knowing I am the one who put them on the guest list. The name on that event card was mine. It had always been mine. They just never thought I was capable of putting it there. Before I tell you what happened that night, I want to ask, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or your country in the comments. And if you have ever been told by your own family that you were not wanted somewhere, go ahead and hit that like button right now, because this story is for you. Subscribe if you are new here, because what I am about to walk you through is the full picture, the text, the years in between, the night at the gala, and the morning my father showed up at my office asking for help. Do not go anywhere. This one goes all the way. To understand why that text broke something in me, you have to understand what my family looked like before it arrived. My father Gerald spent 30 years as a general contractor in Indiana. He built things with his hands, and he was proud of that. He was not a complicated man emotionally. He had a clear idea of what a successful life looked like, and he applied that idea to his children the way he applied measurements to a construction project. Either you fit the plan or you did not. Lauren fit the plan. She was 2 years older than me, socially confident, and she went to nursing school right out of high school. My father introduced her at every family gathering as my daughter the nurse. He said it the way other fathers say, my daughter the doctor, with a specific weight behind it that meant he had done something right. I chose accounting. Then I specialized in healthcare financial compliance, which meant I spent 6 years at a regional auditing firm reviewing the books of medical practices across Ohio and Indiana, looking for the kind of billing errors that get clinics shut down by federal investigators. My father called my career boring. He said it was not real medicine. He said this more than once in front of other people, and I never corrected him because I had learned early that correcting Gerald in public cost you more than it was worth. My mother Diane was not a confrontational woman. She loved me, I knew that, but she expressed it in phone calls when my father was not in the room, in small gestures that she kept private. At the dinner table, when Gerald spoke, she agreed or she went quiet. She never once told him he was wrong about me in a room where I could hear it. Lauren married Bradley 4 years before the Christmas ban. Bradley was charming in the way that people who are primarily interested in themselves are often charming. He had good timing, a strong handshake, and an answer for everything. He and Lauren opened a private wellness clinic called Radiance Vitality Center in suburban Indianapolis. Lauren handled the patient-facing side of the business. Bradley handled the finances and the insurance billing. My father thought Bradley was extraordinary. At Christmas 3 years before the ban, Bradley gave a 15-minute speech at the dinner table about how Radiance was going to change the healthcare landscape in central Indiana. Gerald listened to every word and then stood up and made a toast. Nobody asked me what I had been working on that year. I passed the rolls and I ate my dinner. The following Thanksgiving, I was promoted to senior compliance officer at my firm. I told my mother on the phone. She said it was wonderful. At the dinner table that evening when I mentioned it, Gerald looked up from his plate and said, "Good, maybe now you can help Lauren with the clinic's paperwork." He was not being cruel, not in his own mind. He genuinely believed that the most useful thing I could do with my expertise was hand it over to Lauren. I did not say anything. I had spent years learning that the gap between what I said and what he heard was too wide to cross at a dinner table. 8 months before the Christmas ban, Lauren called me on a Wednesday afternoon. She did not ask how I was. She said she needed $60,000. She said Radiance was in trouble, insurance reimbursements had stalled. They had expanded the clinic faster than their revenue could support. They were behind on the building lease by 3 months, and 2 staff members had not been paid. I asked to see the financials before I made any decision. This was not me being difficult. Reviewing financial records before committing $60,000 of my personal savings was the minimum responsible action. It was also, literally, my profession. Lauren sent over a partial spreadsheet 2 days later. Bradley included some patient intake forms by accident in the same folder. I opened everything and I sat with it for 2 hours. What I found made me deeply uncomfortable. There were billing codes on the spreadsheet that did not match the documented services in the intake forms. There were reimbursement claims submitted to Medicare for procedures that had no corresponding patient documentation. I did not know if this was sloppy record keeping or something more deliberate, but I knew what it looked like to a federal auditor because I had been a federal auditor. I called Lauren back. I told her I could not lend the money right now. I told her, and I was as careful and direct as I could be, that before she submitted another round of insurance claims, she needed to have someone independent look at her billing records. I told her this mattered. I told her it was important. She hung up on me. 40 minutes later, my father called. He told me I was selfish. He told me I had always had a problem with Lauren doing better than me. He told me I was jealous of what she and Bradley had built, and that refusing to help my own family when they needed me said everything about my character. He spoke for several minutes without stopping. When he finished, I said, "I hope the clinic is okay, Dad," and I meant that. I genuinely meant it. The months that followed were quiet in the way that something broken goes quiet. I was not invited to Lauren's birthday dinner in October. In November, my mother sent me a text saying things were tense and asking me to give it time. I gave it time. I kept working. I had started drafting a business plan in the margins of my evenings, something I had been thinking about for 2 years, a compliance software company that would serve exactly the kind of small healthcare practices that kept getting destroyed by billing errors they did not understand. Then it was December 23rd, and Gerald sent 7 words that answered, finally and clearly, a question I had been asking myself for 30 years. I did not respond to the text, not that night, not the next day, not ever. I want to be clear about what that decision cost me, because I think people sometimes hear, I didn't respond, and imagine it was easy. It was not easy. I spent Christmas that year alone in my apartment in Columbus. I made pasta and I watched something on television and I went to bed early. I thought about my mother sitting at that table, probably saying nothing. I thought about Lauren, who had once been my sister in the full sense of the word before money and Bradley, and my father's approval, became more important than honesty. But I made a deliberate choice that night, and I held it for 3 years. I was going to stop spending energy trying to be seen by people who had decided what I was worth without looking at my actual work. I was going to take every hour I had been spending on managing their feelings about me, and I was going to put it somewhere that would grow. The $60,000 Lauren had asked to borrow became the initial operating capital for Vanguard Health Solutions. I incorporated in Ohio in January, 2 weeks after Christmas. I rented a small office in Columbus, and I hired one part-time developer named Marcus, who was 26 years old and understood healthcare data systems better than anyone I had met in 6 years of auditing. Marcus and I built the first version of a platform called ClearPath. The concept was straightforward. Small to mid-size healthcare practices were getting destroyed by billing compliance failures, either because they did not understand the requirements or because someone in their billing department was cutting corners. ClearPath would flag irregularities automatically, cross-reference documentation requirements against submitted codes, and generate compliance reports that a practice could use to self-audit before touching an insurance claim. I knew exactly what to build because I had spent 6 years watching clinics make the same mistakes. I had sat across from practice owners who were blindsided by federal investigators, who had no idea their billing company had been submitting fraudulent codes for 18 months. I had seen families lose their practices, their homes, their professional licenses, over records that no one had bothered to check. I built ClearPath for those people. I built it because the problem was real, and I understood it better than anyone who had tried to solve it before me. My first 3 clients were small family practices in Ohio who were scared after a regional compliance crackdown. I charged a flat monthly subscription and offered every new client a free 30-day audit report. That report alone was worth more than a year of subscription fees to most of them, because it showed them exactly where they were exposed. Word moved through the medical community faster than I had projected. By month 8, I had 22 paying clients and had brought on 2 full-time employees. I also brought in Dominic, a healthcare attorney with 30 years of experience in federal healthcare law, who had reached out to me after seeing an early ClearPath demo at a small industry event. Dominic was 61 years old and had spent 3 decades watching clinics get prosecuted for things that could have been caught early. He became my legal advisor and a fractional equity partner. He believed in the platform, and I trusted his judgment completely. In the second year, I expanded. I moved to a larger office in Columbus, hired a sales team, and opened a second product line, acquisition consulting for investors looking to purchase distressed healthcare practices. Vanguard would perform comprehensive due diligence, assess the compliance and financial risk of a target clinic, and advise on restructuring. One successful acquisition consulting engagement brought in more revenue than 2 years of software subscriptions. The business model changed shape in the best possible way. I connected with Patricia, who led a private equity group called Meridian Capital and had been investing in healthcare for 15 years. Patricia had capital and market access. I had the analytical framework and the compliance expertise. Together, we began acquiring distressed clinic groups across the Midwest, restructuring their operations and billing systems, and either returning them to profitability or liquidating the assets cleanly. By the end of year 3, Vanguard had 41 employees, over 300 client practices, and 3 restructured clinic groups in its portfolio. A third-party valuation ahead of our Series B funding round put the company at $670 million. I did not announce this to my family. I did not post about it. I did not change my phone number. I simply kept working. One morning in October of year 3, my event coordinator sent me the finalized guest list for the annual Vanguard Healthcare Innovation Gala. This was a black tie event I hosted each year for clients, investors, and regional healthcare executives. I reviewed the list, approved it, and then opened the pending acquisitions folder on my desk. The file on top was labeled Radiance Vitality Center, Indianapolis, Indiana. Revenue in decline for 14 consecutive months. Building lease in default for the second time. Under preliminary review by the Office of Inspector General for Medicare billing irregularities, spanning an estimated 22 months. I read the file slowly from the first page to the last, then I went back to the guest list, and I added 2 names. I had my event coordinator send a formal invitation to Radiance Vitality Center, addressed to the executive team, which was the standard language we used for all clinic-level invitees. The invitation described the gala as a healthcare innovation networking event with opportunities to connect with regional investors and potential acquisition partners. For a clinic in the financial position Radiance was in, that description was designed to be impossible to decline. Lauren and Bradley confirmed their attendance within 48 hours. They did not know who founded Vanguard. My company's website listed my title and my name, but I had never agreed to press photography or profile interviews. There were no images of me in any public coverage of Vanguard. I had made that choice deliberately 2 years earlier. And it had served me in ways I had not fully anticipated at the time. I did not call Lauren before the event. I did not contact Gerald. I confirmed the reservation and I kept working. The gala was held at the Pinnacle Grand Hotel in downtown Columbus. The ballroom held 400 guests. I arrived 2 hours before the doors opened with Dominic and Patricia. We reviewed the evening's program together: cocktail hour, seated dinner, keynote remarks from me, an awards presentation, and a segment spotlighting Vanguard's current acquisition pipeline, which included 3 clinics under active review. Radiance was listed as a pending case in the pipeline materials. I wore a dark navy dress. I kept my hair back. I was not nervous. I had been preparing for this evening for 4 months without naming it as preparation. Lauren and Bradley arrived during the cocktail hour. Bradley wore a grey suit. Lauren wore a red dress. They looked like people working very hard to appear confident in a room full of strangers. They collected drinks, introduced themselves to other guests, and distributed business cards for Radiance. I watched them from across the room for 11 minutes before a board member pulled me into a conversation near the east side of the ballroom. I did not approach my sister during cocktail hour. There was no reason to. The evening had a structure, and the structure would do what it needed to do. At dinner, Lauren and Bradley were seated at table 14 in the middle of the room. My table was at the front. After the meal, Patricia introduced me to the room. She said, "Founder and Chief Executive of Vanguard Health Solutions, whose work in healthcare compliance and strategic acquisition has reshaped the regional medical landscape." I walked to the podium. I thanked the room. I spoke about why I had started Vanguard. I did not use emotional language. I said, I built this company because I understood something that took me a long time to accept. The people closest to a problem are often the last ones willing to look at it clearly. I had to become someone who could look at it clearly, even when it cost me something. I did not look at table 14 when I said that. Approximately halfway through my remarks, I saw in my peripheral vision that Lauren had leaned over to Bradley and said something close to his ear. Bradley straightened in his chair. Lauren pulled out her phone. They had just searched the founder of Vanguard Health Solutions and found my name attached to the company they were sitting inside of. After my keynote during the awards presentation, I stepped off the stage and walked through the room. I stopped at table 14. Lauren looked up. When she saw my face, the color left hers completely. I said, "I'm glad you could make it. There is a room upstairs where I would like to speak with both of you privately. My team will come get you whenever you are ready." I did not wait for either of them to answer. I walked back toward the stage. Dominic and 2 members of my team positioned themselves near table 14 for the remainder of the program. The meeting suite on the 14th floor had a table, 4 chairs and a folder at each seat when Lauren and Bradley were brought up. I was already seated. Dominic was beside me. I did not offer water or pleasantries. I said, "Please open the folder in front of you." The folder contained a summary of Vanguard's due diligence report on Radiant's Vitality Center. 22 months of billing irregularities. Medicare reimbursement claims submitted for services with no corresponding patient documentation. A timeline of the preliminary Office of Inspector General review that had been opened 3 months prior to my team receiving the file. Bradley started talking before he had finished reading. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said their billing company had made systematic errors. He said they had already identified the problem and were in the process of correcting the records. His voice was controlled at first, then it climbed higher. He said he was prepared to discuss this with anyone necessary. I let him finish. Then I said, "This is not a negotiation and Vanguard is not going to acquire Radiance. The federal inquiry was already open before your file came to my desk. My team received it the same way we receive any clinic file, and I read it the same way I read any clinic file. The irregularities in that folder were not found by me. They were found by the billing records your clinic submitted. I am not the investigator here. I am just someone who looked at the numbers." Lauren turned to me. She said, "You set this up. You did this on purpose." I said, "I invited you to a gala. You came. I did not fill out your insurance forms." I stood up. I told them the hotel had been informed that their room reservation would not be extended and that their belongings would be brought to the lobby before midnight. I told them Dominic was available if they had questions of a legal nature and that he would provide his contact information before they left the building. I told them I would not be accepting calls from either of them. Then I walked out. The hotel staff escorted Lauren and Bradley to the lobby within the hour. Several people who had been at the gala saw them leave. By the following morning, 2 contacts in the Columbus healthcare community had sent me messages asking about the couple who had been removed from the event floor. I did not respond to those messages. The Office of Inspector General investigation had been moving forward on its own timeline before Vanguard ever received the Radiance file. My due diligence process had documented what federal investigators were already examining. I had not initiated anything. I had simply read a file. 4 months after the gala, Radiance Vitality Center was ordered to suspend operations pending the outcome of the investigation. Bradley was named in a civil complaint filed by federal prosecutors. The clinic's accounts were frozen. The personal property Lauren and Bradley had used as collateral for a business loan, their home became subject to forced sale proceedings as part of the asset review. A local Indianapolis news outlet covered the story. The coverage was straightforward. A wellness clinic owner under federal review for improper Medicare billing, clinic ordered to close, investigation ongoing. Bradley's name was in the headline. Lauren's name appeared in the 3rd paragraph as co-owner of record. Gerald read the article. My mother left a voicemail that I did not return. I went to work the following morning at 7:15, the same as every other morning. I had a funding meeting at 9 and a client call at 11. I sat down at my desk and I opened my calendar and I started my day. 6 weeks after the gala on a Tuesday morning in February, my front desk coordinator called up to my office and said, "There are 2 people here. They say they are your father and your sister. They do not have an appointment." I took 30 seconds, then I said, "Send them up." Gerald looked older than the last time I had seen him, which had been at a family event more than 2 years before the gala. Lauren sat down across from me without being invited. She looked like someone who had not slept properly in a long time. Gerald sat beside her. He did not look around the office. He looked at me. He spoke first. He said he needed my help. He said he knew that things had been handled wrong on his end and that he was sorry about the text. He said the family needed to come together during a difficult time. He used the word family 4 times in the first 3 minutes. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask how the company was. He did not ask anything about my life. He explained what he needed and then he waited. When he finished, I asked him one question. I said, "When you sent me that text on December 23rd, did you think about what it would do to me?" He paused for several seconds. Then he said he had been upset. He said he had not been thinking clearly at the time. He said emotions were running high in the family that year. I nodded. I said, "I believe you, and I am telling you now as clearly as I can that I cannot help you, not because I want to cause you harm, because what Bradley is facing is a federal legal matter, and there is nothing I could do that would be appropriate for me to do. And because I no longer owe this family something that it decided a long time ago I did not deserve to be part of." Lauren had not spoken yet. She sat very still and then she said, "You could have warned me before the gala. You could have called." I said, "I told you 3 years ago to have someone look at the billing records before you submitted another round of claims. That was the only time I was going to say it." She had nothing to say to that. She looked at the surface of my desk. Gerald stood up slowly. He looked at me for a long moment and then he said, "I don't know when you became like this." I said, "I became like this the night you told me nobody wanted me there." I walked to my office door and held it open. I asked my coordinator to walk our guests to the lobby. Gerald moved toward the door. Lauren followed him. Neither of them said anything else. I got into the elevator. I rode down 2 floors to the conference room where my team was waiting with the Series B term sheet. I sat down. I opened the document. I started reading. That is the end of the story that involves my father and my sister. What happened after that belongs to me alone. But I want to leave you with 5 things I learned across those 3 years, because I think they apply to more lives than just mine. The first is that a boundary is not a punishment. When I refused to hand over $60,000 without reviewing the financials, I was not attacking Lauren. I was making a reasonable decision about my own money and my own professional judgment. Saying no is not an act of cruelty. It does not require an apology. The second is that silence is a complete answer. I never responded to that December 23rd text. I never called relatives to build a case for myself. I never asked anyone to take my side. I let my absence be what it was, and I let my work be louder than any argument I could have made. The third is that the people who dismiss you are giving you information. Every dinner where my career was waved off, every toast that did not include me, every moment Gerald looked through me to praise Bradley that was data. It told me exactly where I stood and exactly how much I needed to build outside of that structure. The fourth is that you do not have to be cruel to hold your ground. I never sent a threatening message to anyone in my family. I never gossiped about what I had seen in Radiance's billing records. I did my job, I documented what I found, and I let the systems that exist for exactly this purpose do what they were designed to do. The fifth is the one that took me the longest to understand. Healing does not require the people who hurt you to change. It does not require their remorse or their understanding or their acknowledgement. It requires you to reach a place where their behavior no longer determines what is possible for you. I reached that place. I am still there. The name on that event card was mine. It had always been mine. The only difference was that by the time that evening came, I knew it too. Now I want to hear from you. If you have ever been told by your own family that you were not welcome, or if someone once called your work small and you built something that proved them wrong, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your integrity, I want to know what you decided. If this story stayed with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Hit the like button if you believe that the people who write you off deserve a front row seat to what you build next. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, because there are more, and they are all true, and they are all about people who decided that being underestimated was the last gift their family ever gave them. Thank you for watching, I mean that. Take care of yourself this week. You are building something too, even when no one in your family can see it yet.